Oh, that must mean we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the final Dangerous Dialogues of the season. Today, I'm with some wonderful, wonderful people that I will introduce in a second. I'm Zoe, your host, and today we are going to be talking about immigration. Ooh, controversial. So immigration is a topic that touches the very essence of humanity, as people have been migrating across borders for centuries in search of better opportunities, safety, and the chance to build a brighter future. The United Kingdom, with its rich history, has long been a melting pot of various nationalities, all contributing to the nation's growth and diversity. In recent years, UK's immigration has undergone significant changes shaped by evolving policies, global events, and shifts in public perception. So today we're going to be talking about some of those topics. But first, I'm going to introduce my lovely panel today. So Natalia, if you can introduce yourself and then maybe tell us a little bit about your current stance on immigration.
Hi, I'm Natalia. I work as an arts practitioner, specifically in community arts, and have done for over a decade. And my current stance on immigration, just to put it out there straight away, being a person that very much benefited from having been a refugee and an immigrant myself, I think I almost feel obligated for it to always be positively to migration, if that makes sense. It would feel insincere for me to be like, yeah, but now all immigrants don't come in. So I guess always with the inclination that people should always be safe and have the option to be somewhere safe, or even where they want, where it's a more positive life for their family. Yeah.
Fantastic. Brian, tell us a little about yourself and about your stance on immigration.
So my name is Brian. This is my introduction. It wasn't written by ChatGPT. I am an actor in London. So I mentioned that because it sounded very ChatGPT there, Zoe. Just I don't know, something about you, Zoe. I'm currently immigrating.
I like to type my things out first, Brian.
Sure. Anyway, I'm currently immigrating from Scotland to England. I have my passport ready for King's Cross Station. Should be arriving in London as soon as this finishes. So yeah, my stance on immigration: let the world be free. Let people go where they want to go. Borders are made up by governments, by entities. So yeah, let the world be the world.
Amazing, perfect. So to start off with, I think we're just going to talk a little bit about what exactly immigration is and how it differs from emigration or migration. So does anyone want to start us off on that?
Oh, I always get confused with these words, but I guess immigration is when you are immigrating to live. So like by choice, right? So immigration is a choice. No? Compared to like someone who's running. I don't know. I'm not going to answer this question.
Brian?
We could start it off quite controversially by saying an expat is a white person from the UK, and an immigrant is someone not from the UK.
Fair enough. Yep. According to Google, which I love to do, let's see. Immigration and emigration are the terms that are often used, but there are some important differences between the two. Immigration refers to the act of coming into a country, where emigration refers to the act of leaving a country. So if you're emigrating, you're leaving one country, so you're an emigrant and an immigrant. So it just means coming and going, basically.
And what's a migrant, for the sake of?
Honestly, the first thing I thought of was birds. Because they migrate. I wonder if migration is moving within the country you're from.
For the sake of all of it, if we're going to talk about like opinions on all of it, like it already, even with what Brian just said about like expats and immigrants, all of it is just semantics, right? You're
Yeah.
going from one place to the next for whatever reason that might be that economic, or be that safety, or be that you just fancy living somewhere else, right? The minute we start to categorize that, we're already categorizing people in a different kind of hierarchy. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? It's all just words.
Yeah, we're already putting people in boxes, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree with that, I have to say. Let's see. So we've got a few things to talk about while we're here, obviously. Anyone actually know how the UK's immigration system works? Like, how does it work? Because I find that I'm really uneducated on the immigration system, because it's something that's never applied to me. I've never had to use it, even going somewhere else. So do either you guys know or understand how it works?
I feel like this is a Natalia question.
Yeah.
But also my specific experience of it would be quite outdated now, and what my experience of it would be an entirely different experience to someone else. So for context, I was a refugee from Russia in the 90s.
Brian,
do you say something, Brian?
Brian is currently on the train, so his Wi-Fi will be going in and out. So if we do lose him at any point, or he does interrupt or talk over, that is the reason. He hasn't realised that anything's going on.
I think my personal experience of how it works, is it's long and it's dreary and it's painful and it's many hours in standing in line at a Home Office and printing your fingerprints and then hoping that they say yes. But then I also realized that it took us for like, this is what happened. It took us 10 years to get our passport, our British passport. That's 10 years of indefinite live to remain, various statuses, then appealing and all sorts of things, where we got very, and we are lucky because we went back to Russia at one point and came back and were seeking asylum a second time, and got very lucky because we got a caseworker that took on our case. But we had to basically, the first 2 years that we were here, we had to like slash them away in order to seek asylum the second time. And I don't know how, don't ask me how it happened. We just got very lucky with a caseworker. But that is my experience. And even though it took so long, we also experienced as white people in this country, and I imagine an entirely different experience to someone who was not white. Do you know what I mean? So if my experience was long and dreary, whereas somebody else's might be long, dreary, and also quite frightening and quite intimidating, because that's definitely tactics that. So my brother works in immigration law, and tactics that they use is coming into someone's house in the middle of the night to scare them. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, if we're talking about like the refugee and asylum system specifically, and not necessarily the immigrant system, because that's slightly different, then it's not fun. Like I wouldn't wish it on my friend. And you only really do it if you really need to. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're an economic migrant, that's an entirely different experience. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I can totally see what you're saying. Looking up on the wonderful Google, as I like to do, it's saying here that it's now the UK's now introduced a points-based immigration system, which I'm not entirely sure how that works. Like, I get points by playing games.
It depends. It's a point-based system, means how much are you able to bring to the country as an immigrant. So if you're a doctor, you'll have really high points. If you're a teacher, you'll have high points. Whereas if you're an arts worker, you have no points.
Yes, because there's not many great things that the government has to say about the arts. Let's not revert back to COVID-19 and Rishi Sunak and his many opinions. Funny that. I think they've just newly introduced this points-based system, as far as I'm aware. I think it's been a hot topic of debate
Yes.
recently. I know. Are there any other countries that employ the points-based system that you guys know of?
Australia. Boris Johnson.
I did think
was,
Yeah.
Yeah, Boris Johnson, I believe, modelled his immigration policy on an Australian-style points-based system. I'm not sure what that actually meant at the time, but he seemed very keen to be closer to sort of Kansas, sort of Kansas Confederation, if you will. And I mean, if you ask me, I think he was just trying to become less like the EU and more like another white English-speaking country that don't tend to like their immigrants very much either. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, Australia is the only one, the only notable one I can think of.
Yeah. Speaking of Boris Johnson, I don't know how many of our viewers know this, but the UK went through a little thing called Brexit, which may or may not have been a result of possible immigration laws, or may not have affected personal opinion on immigration. What do you guys think? Do you think that Brexit came from immigration, or do you think it has affected public opinion?
Brian?
Brian?
Yes. Yes and no. Yes and no. I think Brexit was, I have to be careful what I'm saying because I'm on a very public training moment. I think Brexit was fueled by many things, but I think some aspects of the far right like focus on immigration as sort of the main topics of Brexit, because I think that resonated with a lot of people. I mean, don't know how true it was, during the whole debate about their points on immigration, but I think if it wasn't for the immigration points, I think it would have swung the other way. I reckon the Remain way.
I think immigration is a very tasty scapegoat that is easy to blame because it's an other and it's different, and some people in your cafe speaking a different language who, do you know what I mean? Like, it's easy, isn't it? It's easy to hate on the other, and it's easy to create to stir that hate up even more to whatever gain you want. And I think it was a stirred up hatred, and I think it's crap. Sorry.
It's a way to keep the infighting happening, so no one knows what's going on.
And like we were having a brief chat before this, is like domestic policy should absolutely be improved, but one isn't entirely dependent on each other. You can treat immigrants well and also have good domestic policy. You don't have to. The amount of money spent on immigration is not that great that it would that greatly affect domestic policy. But it's the same as with the LGBTQ community. It's like any other that you can like demonize. It's easy. Those whatever people in that cafe speaking a different language that refuse to take on your culture. Those people. It's easy. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's just. And it's crap for the people that are the repercussion of that kind of demonizing.
So what would you say to those who would argue that, people are coming in, it's filling up jobs that people here could have had, therefore feeding into, unemployment, etc. What would you say back to that person?
I don't know the statistics, but I know that lots of people left once Brexit happened, and I know that lots of those jobs are still not fulfilled by people from this country. A lot of lower skilled jobs were taken on by immigrants, that people from this country. Not everywhere. Again, this is like, I don't know the figures on this, so I don't want to do you know what I mean? If I'm entirely wrong, fully own up. But do you know what I mean? It's, yeah, I don't think that's personally like a valid reason to kick everyone out of the country and make their lives really hard.
Brian? It's the
Yeah,
silence.
I think um, I think in terms of people leaving, we do have a vacuum, the vacuum of unskilled labour. You look at strawberry farms, you look at fruit farms at the moment, and they have a massive labour shortage. After Brexit, they all left. My institution family, there was one point that they were coming over to fill in the sort of vacuum of strawberry picker jobs. But they didn't come at the end because the pay was far too low. Um, I think with Brexit, immigration has actually gotten worse. No, sorry, that's not it. It's gotten, as in the situation has gotten worse in the sense that people have left, and now we have to make up the shortfall ourselves. The thing is, people in this country, from this country, they're too proud to do those jobs. So, what has stricter immigration policy actually brought us? It's brought us just vacancies. It's brought us vacancies for jobs that no one will actually wants to do. And when people are saying, immigration is their job, okay, great, but do you want to do jobs? No, then what's the issue?
Yeah, totally fair. I think a lot of people have an issue, or from what I've heard around personal experience, some people have an issue with, especially men coming over, working jobs and sending all the money back home. Instead of putting, Brian's gone, instead of putting it back into the economy, they're sending it back to their countries. And a lot of people don't think that's fair. We should be putting it back in here if you're going to be working here. How do you feel about that?
I don't. So is the argument that it's not reinvested back into the country?
Yes,
right?
Instead they're popping it back over to their families over there. They're taking the money that they've earned here, which is the UK's money. It's meant to be in this economy. Why are they then sending it back across? And they've only come across to do that.
The amount that these people are earning is nothing compared to the high-end business people sitting in wherever, I don't know, Canary Wharf or whatever, and those people are also not reinvesting it back into the country. And the difference that would make comparative to this pittance that immigrants make. I know these immigrants that have been sending money back home, and they're not sending money back home because they want to get rich back home. They're sending money back home because their parents can't afford medication. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not, they didn't come here as economic migrants to make huge amounts of money. They came here to survive. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, that seems a slightly inhumane way of looking at people that just want their mum to be okay and to be able to pay for a house or whatever. And that's also not to belittle immigrants, to say that everyone's, do you know what I mean, broke or whatever. But generally, if you're coming here as an economic migrant, you're coming to make the kind of money that you couldn't anywhere else. And isn't that the privilege of living in such a wonderful country? Shouldn't we be proud that people want to come here and make money here? The minute it's like fully locked down, we'll be like, but where did all the people go? Don't they want to live here? Do you know? I don't know. I totally understand it. It just feels like it's fighting small fish when there are big fish that should be fought that cause much more damage than people who do that.
Yeah, it's a very reductionist kind of view. Like, just boil it down to this one thing.
They're just not the ones
what we like to do.
They're not the ones causing our economy to erupt. I promise. It's not them.
Yeah, Brian, you obviously won't know what the question was, which is fine.
I think I figured it out though. I think I figured it out. I think with people that are saying the issue is migrants, immigrants wanting to send cash back home. I mean, so what? Like, they earn that money, they can do whatever they like with it, But I think the people that complain about that, I mean, like Natalia said, it's not big money that's being lost on immigrants. It's scapegoating is what it is. people look for issues with some aspects of society, and immigrants are unfortunately being scapegoated at the moment. So it's easy to blame the other, but it's not easy to blame ourselves. And I think that's the answer to your question, which I never heard.
You did pretty well. But what about those who have come to the country illegally and are then getting, like, say, cash in hand jobs? They're not paying the same taxes that those who are working are paying back into the country, for the NHS and stuff like that. The NHS is kind of crippling down at the moment. So what about those who do tend to cut corners?
Then the issue isn't with them. The issue is with the employers. I mean, the employers are the dodgy ones in this case. And if you're desperate enough to do a cash in hand job, that's a failure of the system. That's not a failure of you. It's a failure of the system and failure of the employer. I don't think we should be going after immigrants in that case. We should be going after people that are given at these dodgy garages.
I think also the assumption is that just because, like, right now what we're doing is we're like brushing all immigrants with one brush. What about all those immigrants that don't pay taxes, whatever? We look at English people as different people. Some commit crimes and are, maybe not such great people. Some are wonderful, and I don't know, are doctors and nurses that give their life for little money or whatever. And I think the assumption is that all immigrants have to be great in order for us to humanely treat them. There are people like anywhere. They are not one big grouped mass. They are lots of different kinds of people. Some of them suck and maybe might get better one day. Some people just are, I don't know, for whatever reason, they are maybe not necessarily what we deem as good. Some people are not necessarily, do you know what I mean? And you can't go like, but what about all those, you can't tar everyone with one brush, because that's in our beauty. If we're going to claim as an English or British society to be these astute, civilized, understanding people, then we have to understand that people are different and it's not one big clump of people. Do you know what I mean? So yes, there are some people that absolutely abuse the system, like there will be in any other situation. Cool. Let's deal with those people that abuse the system. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Just while you're talking there, Natalia, actually, I'd be really interested to know, obviously you came originally as a refugee from Russia. Yeah. Is there any times that you can remember throughout your life that your status has affected you within this country?
Yeah, we couldn't leave for ages. I guess we couldn't vote for a long time, but I wouldn't know because I was a child, so I wouldn't know. Being foreign's weird. Like it's not a great time. I wouldn't love to do it again, but it's not being able to leave, not being able to work legally. So even once you get refugee status, so for example, people talk a lot about Ukraine, right? So getting refugee status is theoretically like a really good thing, because that means you can stay in the country. But refugee status, I believe, means you can't work for however long. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it's that. Whereas Ukrainians, in the last year, have been allowed to work straight away, but they don't have refugee status, which means they can't move on through the ranks of getting themselves to getting themselves to the point of getting a passport eventually. Does that make sense? So theoretically in 2 years' time they have to go back home. That's kind of the agreement they have. So people might be like, Ukrainians have this really great deal, but actually they have no lasting status here whatsoever. They have a very temporary contract with the country. And so all those things. And you will find refugees definitely within our community of people that came here that worked illegally because you have to survive. But you can't go back to, do you want to go live in my Soviet country? Or in 90s Russia, or wherever the fuck they come from? Do you know what I mean? I don't know, yeah. Sorry, I don't know if I'm being very eloquent.
No, you are. You're doing totally fine. you obviously recently worked with a lot of Ukrainian refugees,
Yeah.
as far as I'm aware. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about their experience so far? If you can share, obviously you can't speak for them properly, but
I think if we are being honest, their experience as far as other refugee groups is brilliant, right? They have loads of things done for them. Even the problems that they experience, I think if we're going to look at it on a real objective scale, they're minimal compared to other refugees. But what we as a group, we spoke about it a lot, and they were like, we're just so tired of saying thank you. Listen, we just came from a war. We just want to be treated like humans, man, because back home houses are being blown up every day. And the conclusion we came to is that every refugee should be treated like this, basically.
Yeah, another question I'm going to throw to both of you, Brian. I'm going to go to you first. Why do you think there seems to be such a difference between how Ukrainian refugees are treated and how, say, Syrian refugees and etc. are treated? Do you think there's any reasons behind that?
Yes, there is. I don't remember the term for it. I don't remember the exact term for it. But it's what we refer to when there are shared commonalities between two groups of people, two different nationalities. We, as ethnic Europeans, have more in common politically and sort of geographically than the likes of Syria, than the likes of war-torn African nations. We see, in Ukraine, people that share many ideals as people back here in the UK, and when we see that, we see ourselves, running from these battlefields, running from these war-torn cities, Kyiv, Kharkiv, Donetsk, etc. But it's unfortunate that people don't see the same when we look at Syria, when we look at Afghanistan. They to many people, that is a different world. And I think that has a little bit to do with it. We see less common ground with countries in Asia and Africa than we do with countries on our doorstep in Europe. I think that's true. I don't remember what the term actually is, but there is a specific term for it. And if I can remember what it is, I'll scream it during when Natalia speaks.
Okay. On you go, Natalia?
I mean, that I've never actually heard that, so that makes a lot of sense to me, because I don't actually know. My fear is that it's racism, but if there's a more logical kind of kind of like a human nature situation to it, that makes that almost goes, okay, it's not just complete outright racism, which kind of alleviates some terror that I've had about why. So I don't know the answer to it. I just hope it's not as bad as I think it might be.
Yeah, I mean, that's where my mind first went as well. Was the racism route. That's where I initially went. Obviously, these things are very subjective, so we won't always have the complete answers. And I just want to reiterate to everyone, just while we're talking, none of us here are experts on this topic. We're just talking about how we feel and how we perceive, which a lot of that comes from, media portrayals, etc. Like, our opinion is built on the same reason opposite opinions are built on. But I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware, none of us are experts on this topic. We're just three people having a conversation. So what do you think are, going back to immigration, rather than those who have to come across, what do you think are some of the main reasons that the UK is such a nice country that people want to come to? Natalia, do you want to start us off with that?
You can make money here. There's opportunity. There's life. But there's so many geopolitical reasons why this country has so much more opportunity than other countries. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a really, there's opportunity. It's exciting. There's good stuff going on. Why wouldn't you? It's the same as like when I moved. I used to live in Hong Kong. because it was exciting, because it was interesting. You know, there's longevity of life, there's hope, prosperity, all those really annoying words that are like, yeah.
Brian?
I think what a lot of people forget, yes, Europe is considered safe. It's considered, economically elite. And people ask the question, why don't they just move to Germany or move to France or whatever? And they do, they absolutely do. But I think a lot of people forget that so many people in the world speak English, and the language that you speak affects your economic ability and affects the jobs you can have. If you don't speak English, you can't work in a store, you can't work customer service. There's very little that you can actually do. I mean, maybe you can work as a cleaner, but whatever. But because, England was colonized a good chunk of the world, what we now have, especially places like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, we have a lot of people that speak English. So where are they going to go? They're either going to go to the USA, Canada, Australia, or in fact, the UK. They're not going to go to somewhere like Spain where English isn't the first language. If they have more chance to, meet their economic potential, if they can meet their economic potential in somewhere that, there is common ground, there is common ground, they'll naturally seek those opportunities. And anyone that says, why don't they just stop at the first place of safety, doesn't realize that. And I don't think they realize how hard it is to be surrounded in a foreign country with people that don't speak your language, don't understand your culture at all.
Yeah. Natalia, were you going to say something?
Yeah, it's also like, I feel like it's a real source of pride of being in Britain, right? Is that people want to come here, is that people think it's a really cool place to be, that things are happening. And it's also the fact that English is so important is because the country made English so important in the world. Do you know what I mean? So it feels almost like when we complain about it, it's like, but isn't this what we wanted? For everyone to want to be here? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can understand. And I mean, I think currently there are a lot of policies and things put in place that makes the UK a favourite. However, there seems to be a lot of good things for those coming in. But how do we feel about those of us that are already in the country struggling? With homelessness, there's a lot of children in poverty and stuff like that, whereas the government seems to put a lot of focus on those coming in and helping those people out. They seem to be forgetting those of us that are already here. I know we were chatting earlier and I says my biggest thing with immigration is I'm quite happy for other people to come into the country, but there doesn't seem to be the same effort being put in for those of us who are struggling already here. How do you guys feel about that?
I think one thing people forget as well is when immigrants come here, they still struggle as well. They're also struggling. It's a myth that when immigrants come over, that they're getting lavish with benefits. They're being put in 10-room council houses with swimming pools. Like that's absolutely not the case. They're being put in ramshackle accommodation that is not fit for purpose. Sometimes they're put in prison-like structures. I get your point. The government has the ability to help everybody, but the idea that somehow people coming over here and getting a better standard of life than people that are already struggling here, I don't think it holds much water. I don't think it does. But that being said, I get your point, and I do think the government can and should help everyone equally.
I think, as I said before, I think it's really as humans, it's really easy for us to, if we're struggling, to look at an immigrant across the road who does have a home or whatever comparison we're drawing, and to be like, but he has it and I don't. So that they must favour them ahead of us. when I don't think it's an either or situation. I don't think immigration is the cause of people having problems here. It's just the easiest thing to see someone and be like, that's the person that has the thing that I do not have, and therefore I'm angry at them. But actually that's they are like, the genuine spend on immigration just isn't that great comparative to all the other things they're spending on that really are screwed up. Do you know what I mean? And for context, when I was growing up, we were on what's it called, where you have to get food every day, every week. We weren't like, what is it? Food banks. We ate on food banks. And we do you know what I mean? We hardly just about survived. Do you know what I mean? So I promise you, immigrants aren't like, unless they're economic immigrants, as in like real rich, whatever kind of immigrants, that's a whole other thing. But the people that you're talking about are not, as Brian said, are not like living it up, going like, haha, we've won over the British. Like, I promise you, they're having a shit time. Do you know what I mean? That it's even that shit time is better than wherever they came from. So there must be a reason why they're here. I just don't think poor immigrant person that lives here that's not doing very well / immigrant that's doing all right isn't like equals that is because of that. I don't think that's how the equation works. I think that's over here, one's over there, and really neatly they put the two next to each other just to build a sort of, do you know what I mean? But I don't know. This is like my assumption of what might be the case.
Brian, anything to add to that?
No, it's pretty spot on. I think it's easy to say that immigration is the cause for someone's success when if someone has come over to this country and has made a success of it, that's not because the government has given them that. I think I know what I'm trying to say, and I think I'm adding to Talia's point, but correct me if I'm wrong. But hopefully the Wi-Fi is just cutting out all the waffle here. Anyway, I think it's easy to blame an immigrant that's getting £15 in child support a week or something like that from the government. It's easy to blame them for being a drain on the country's resources when, like Talia said, it's so insignificant what immigrants are actually receiving. And in many cases, immigrants actually do worse than people who are on universal credit. Refugees get so little cash to actually support themselves when they get here. And even if all that money that immigrants are actually receiving, so refugees are actually receiving from the government to support themselves, even if all that cash went back into the universal credit system, we'd find that people wouldn't really be seeing much of an increase in what they'd be receiving anyway. It's minute. It's minute. It's I think it's a bit of a, not an empty point, but I think we've been focusing too much on something so insignificant that we're missing the bigger picture.
Yeah, and we all know what that bigger picture is. Another point I think is fascinating not fascinating to think about, but I think we should put in there is there is a lot of opinions are fear-based on this topic. Do you think that it would be beneficial for those who come over to assimilate more into the British culture, or do you think that British culture is all about being diverse and having these different things? Because I know I've spoken to a few people and they've said about how certain religions are coming over and trying to change our basis for things into theirs, and trying to take over, etc. So what do you guys feel about that kind of thing?
From personal experience, when we were coming over in the 90s, and it was like mid-90s, there was a real sense from our generation of immigrants, specifically from Russia, I can't really speak on anyone else, to assimilate in the culture. So we were really thinking, okay, we need to learn the language well, hence the really good English accent. We need to, do you know what I mean? Like there was a real a real sense of like we needed to do that. Oh, sorry, I don't know what my phone just did.
Ooh. Oh, you're fine.
But do you know what? I actually, I'm going to refrain from having an opinion on it because I haven't formed it yet, because I know that was my experience and I don't think I hated it. I was never asked to not be who I was. It was always celebrated, like my background and my history and whatever. But I don't I don't know. I don't know the answer to this one. I don't know. I think assimilation to some extent is necessary because you've chosen to come to that country, but not to the point where you have to change everything that you are. And I don't know where that line is. Don't know.
Totally fair. Brian?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to this either. I think a lot of far-right groups will focus on this, focus on certain radical groups that are actively trying to change the constitution, trying to change law, trying to introduce their version of their religion onto the masses. Unfortunately, not very successfully. People will focus on that, and they'll be like, assimilation is key. Like you have to assimilate if you're going to live here. But ironically, when people do assimilate, you'll still get the same people screaming at them speak English, because they're speaking it with a slightly funny accent. There is no pleasing these people. There is absolutely no pleasing these people, and if. I don't know what the experiences are of the people coming in, but in terms of if someone wants to assimilate, that should be their choice. But ultimately, if they're coming in, if they're paying taxes, then really, who cares?
Yeah, and although the immigration can add a lot of economic growth within the country, there are arguments that there's struggle in the infrastructure, specifically with places like the NHS and that, who are already struggling as it is. So the more and more people that come in, the more they're going to struggle. The same with housing shortages. We're constantly seeing more housing and accommodation being put up and taking away green spaces because there's so many people in the country. Can we really afford it? Do we have the means for more and more people to come in? What do you guys think?
Yes.
Hi. Brian, did you just say yes?
Yes.
Yeah. That's my answer. Yeah.
I think again, we're kind of like saying at risk of saying the same thing over and over again. It's just not the biggest expense. There are things that are much more pressing, like overpriced housing in places where people who have lived there their whole lives can no longer afford housing. Do you know what I mean? I just don't think this is the problem. This just isn't the thing that is causing everyone here to have a hard time.
Do you agree, Brian?
Yeah. And you're saying there's lack of green space at the moment. That's a railway station. We're just going through a field there. Hold on. Look at all that. That's a lot of green space right there. Mohammed can live over there. David can, he can live over there. The one thing that people forget, that the island of Great Britain is huge. It's a big country. We have resources. And you speak about strains on the NHS. Absolutely, there's strains on the NHS, but there's strains on the NHS anyway. And in theory, someone comes over and pays their taxes and contributes to national insurance. We should be able to fund the NHS, and things we can invest in the NHS. But the thing is, our government chooses to invest in nuclear weapons. So again, it's another moot point. We have the resources. It's just not being diverted to the right places. And again, when we say we can't do it because we can't support immigrants because we don't have enough money, we do have enough money. So our government's choosing not to spend it.
Yeah, Natalia, anything to add to that?
Yes, I agree. The money's there. You don't want to spend it. And also, yeah, the people that are causing the worst things are not the people we're most angry at, which is even more infuriating.
Yeah. So we discussed a little bit about illegal immigrants. Obviously, the media loves to put forward all these photos of people on boats coming over illegally and sneaking into the country. And some deaths have resulted from these people obviously coming across and things not going the way they expected. What do we have to say about that kind of thing? Because obviously, a lot of people are like, well, they're illegal, they shouldn't be coming in. But what about the reasons, behind them, like them taking that risk with their lives to come across to a country? Like, how bad is it over there? Do people forget like how bad things are happening across the pond, so to
I
speak?
just can't imagine being angry at someone who is on a really like hectically busy, overcramped boat that they know there are chances they're gonna die. That like I can't imagine how we could possibly be angry at that person. Like, they're not having a fun time. Do you know what I mean? Like, genuinely, just put it down, like, really simple. Are they having a good time? Are they doing this because they're like, oh, I'm gonna go and steal? Do you know what I mean? They're doing it because they're desperate. And how can we do this thing where we go, oh, let's look at this like country somewhere in Africa and they're having a terrible time. We just can't imagine how bad it is until you're there. From lived experience, you cannot imagine how bad it is until you are in it, until you feel it. Do you know what I mean? We were looking at Italy pre-pandemic before it came here going, oh, yeah, that's bad, but it won't be that bad. And then we suddenly got it and we were like, oh God, no, this really is bad. That's like lived experience of until you feel it in your skin, you can't know how bad it is. Do you know what I mean? And it's hard for us to imagine. So we turn these boats and we turn these people into characters in a newspaper, and not humans, but they are humans. They are people with flesh and blood. And do you know what I mean? So I think it's almost a fool's errand for us to try and imagine what their lives are like, because we can't, because we're not there. But we can hopefully use all of this civilization we claim to have to build that empathy, to be wiser, to be smarter, to be, kinder. Isn't that what the point of being like this, this country that is so good at life? Do you know what I mean? Isn't it that we develop kindness in a way that no one else does? Do you know what I mean? So yeah, there you go. I'm not very good at finishing my points.
I'm great at getting up to here, and then
I just like rock.
Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's demonizing what's easy to demonize. People don't understand what these people are going through, so it's easy to blame them for issues. And yeah, it's a lack of understanding. It's a complete lack of understanding on their situations. I mean, you have people from Sudan escaping the civil war, appearing on dinghies, going across the Mediterranean, and the far right, like they're demonizing them for a situation that is not their fault, and all they want to do is survive. And by going on this perilous journey, there's actually a big chance they won't survive anyway. It's I'm not sure what your question is. The media is not good.
Can I just if we were really genuinely to flip this around, like fully, let's not flip it around in like but if it was me, I would also be really kept. No, let's fully flip this around. Tomorrow a civil war starts in the UK, right? And we are in ultimate danger. I guarantee you, we are all entitled enough to think that a country will take us in. And how is it that we are more entitled to that basic human right than any other person. It's just, you know what I mean?
Because we'd be expats.
Well, quite right.
Immigrants.
But the case in point.
Yeah, honestly, the entire time we were talking about that was going to be my next point, is how would we react to if we were going through the same things that these people are going through? Because I sure as hell know, like, if my child was in danger, I'm definitely jumping on a boat to go somewhere else, you know. Are we really seriously thinking that every single one of us would go through all the correct procedures and whatnot to you know, we'd be standing all in one place, like trying to get all these forms and whatnot filled out, and then ended, you know? We'd be trying to get out there as quickly as possible, as easily as possible. So I completely understand your point, because that's what I was thinking the whole time. Like, it's very hypocritical of us to be like, no, you can't do it, but if things are reversed, we would probably all do it. I have to agree. I have to agree with that. Do we think that there is enough control on immigration, or do we think that there should be less control or more? How do we feel about that?
My partner works in the civil service, and it's a bit of a mess at the moment. But it's not a mess because it's like we should be, you know, like we should have sterner people on the border. It's a mess because people just don't seem to know what they're doing. So yes, it'd be nice if people knew what they were doing.
So not more or less control, just more people actually knew what was happening.
Yeah, just good quality immigration work.
Brian? I think he has to be quiet right now.
Oh.
Hello?
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 I hear you. We hear you.
I've been going through quite a lot of tunnels.
Okay.
Quite a lot of tunnels on this line. So the Wi-Fi is just dying here. What was the question, and what did Natalia say?
The question was, do we think that there's enough control in immigration, there's not enough, or there should be less? And Natalia says that less about the whole control situation, more about people actually knowing what the fuck they're supposed to be doing in regards to immigration.
Right, okay. I think the UK is built on bureaucracy. The UK always spoke about, the Brexiteers always spoke about how bureaucratic the European Union was, and how free and open they were when it comes to immigration. But in reality, the British they're very bureaucratic. Like, they're asking for all these, so many forms, for so many documentation, proof of residency. Like, they're asking for loads. You know, I don't know the answer to that, but what I do know is that, if anything, it's probably too strict, and we need more people in.
Fair. Yeah, completely. So we spoke a little bit about the effect Brexit had on immigration, and now we're going to quickly have a little chat about, just this little thing that happened a few years ago with COVID-19, and what kind of effect do we believe that had on immigration? Obviously, most of the countries were like shut down, not getting in, although I think some of us took a bit longer than we should have to do that. Do we feel like immigration is now still affected by COVID-19 as things have calmed down? Do we think that it's completely flipped on its head? How do we feel COVID-19 affected immigration?
Brian, go on.
I have literally no opinion on that.
I don't think it's affected
Not
it
even
in the
something
way
I considered.
I don't think it's affected it in the way that you may be asking the question, in the sense of like there was a lockdown and therefore people couldn't get in. I think it's affected it more in the long term of like, that's now had an effect on the cost of living crisis, and now we scapegoat immigrants like we always have. Any other group, let's crack onto them and say it's their fault. Do you know what I mean? So I think maybe in that way, but not necessarily in any like actual border control way that I've understood anyway, or that I've known.
And Brian has no opinion, which is unlike him. Brian usually always has something to say. No, that's totally fair.
This time, I actually have nothing to say about it.
Surprising for you, honestly. So I want to finish on more of a light-hearted note. Obviously, this topic of conversation is very controversial, and a lot of people will disagree with all of us on things that we said. A lot of people will agree. The main point is to have conversations about it. We don't need to shout at each other and scream at each other about these things. We can have two different opinions and still be friends, you know? It's fine. We can talk about these things. It's okay. It's not terrifying as much as it seems to be, but being able to talk about these things opens up different avenues for people to go down, and different understandings of different views, which is okay to do. It's not one way, it's multiple ways. I wanted to finish off, as I was saying, what advice would you give to someone who wants to immigrate to the UK? Brian, I'm going to start off with you because Natalia, I think you'll be good to end on for this one. So Brian, any advice that you would give to anyone wanting, is there any advice you would give to anyone wanting to leave the UK as well and to immigrate somewhere else?
Choose Scotland. It's the best part of the UK.
That's in the UK.
Yes.
So far.
I suppose expect the worst, prepare for the best. You know, I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I think there is. I mean, this is difficult for me to say as someone who's pro Scottish independence. I think there is a lot of good, and I think, you know, for those ready to receive that, I think it is available, but also be prepared for a lot of people telling you that it's not good here, and that there's going to be and there will be people that are against you for no apparent reason, apart from the reason that you're a different color, you know, or speak a different language or have a different accent. I think prepare for a lot of hardship because it's not easy. It's not easy coming here and starting a new life. But I mean, if you are doing that, hats off to you. You're a lot braver than I ever could be.
Natalia?
My initial reaction was really negative, but it turned into a positive one. So I'm glad you came to me next. My family we love this country, and at the end of the day, it like saved us, right? Like we were quite literally going to die, and then we didn't. Do you know what I mean? And it is, despite, I still think the people that will laugh at your accent or whatever are less than the people that are incredibly warm and welcoming and are open to giving you the opportunity. Or do you know what I mean? So I don't really know about advice. Definitely that it's a very difficult country to be on, and me and my family have this conversation a lot about how you have to pay for freedom. And I feel like how hard this country is sometimes as a result of how free it is in so many ways, which means you have to listen to all opinions, and which means that sometimes someone who doesn't have your opinion might get into power, because that's what democracy is. And whether we can like argue about how democratic it is or how free it is until whatever time, but as far as we understand, this is one of the freest countries in the world. And that is really glorious and beautiful. And why wouldn't you want to be in a country where you can say whatever the fuck you want?
Perfect. What a way to end. Thank you both so much for joining me. As I said earlier at the beginning of this is the final Dangerous Dialogues this series. I do have a little bit of announcement. I have it here on my iPad. We will return. We will return for series 5. I didn't know how to share the screen, and I couldn't be bothered trying to figure it out. So here it is. Dangerous Dialogues will return for series 5. I got sent that earlier from Tom, who is not here, is currently in Greece. We will be coming back, and there may be a little bit of a surprise within series 5 that I don't know if I'm allowed to share because Tom never actually got back to me. So I'm not going to, just in case. But it's been so wonderful having you guys here. It's been so wonderful to do these Dangerous Dialogues again. I am unsure when we will be getting again, but we will be. And hopefully we'll have new faces, old faces. wonderful faces as they all are. Thank you again, Natalia and Brian. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. I'm going to have a cup of tea and go to bed. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
I'm going to figure out how to end. Oh, Brian left.
Thank you so much. I'll speak to you soon.